Welcome back to section 2. We're going to begin with what is a verification request? Verification request is basically information reasonably necessary to evaluate the claim. Verification requests come in various different forms. It can be a request for a signed statement. We went through that in a prior video and how to deal with that and EUOs. Medical records, HIPAA forms, imaging, invoices, test results, wage and employment verification. The list can go on, all depending on what is necessary for that particular claim. Timing is the key to it all. The timing rules for the initial verification. So we get in the bill or the NF2 or the NF3, and that begins our 15 business days calendar clock to start running. So once we send out that first verification request timely, our 30-day window to pay or deny gets tolled. We try and move away from the word delay. We like to use the word tolled. Tolling pauses the claim. Doesn't delay anything. We don't want to delay claims if at all possible. Late requests. Those aren't tolling. The denial clock continues if it's late, or we might lose time off of the 30 days to pay or deny. Christine O'Shea, I know you saw that the other day. You want to explain a little bit how that works, where if our initial verification request goes out on the 17th business day as opposed to the 15th? What?
Right, so it just takes it off the back end. So we do have a little bit of wiggle room. Unlike the last section that we went through, this one we do have slightly more wiggle room. We have those 15 days, and if they don't go out within the first 15 business days, let's say, for example, like Mike just used, it went out on the 17th day, that's 2 days over where we were supposed to have sent it out. What the regulations allow us to do is that it just takes off of our ultimate 30 days that we have to deny. So instead of having 30 days to deny, we'd have then 28 days to deny. Those 2 extra days just get taken off of the 30. What we had an example the other day was unfortunately the applicant, and we knew it going in, but we were almost hoping that they would miss it. But we had a good applicant, and the arbitrator agreed that we actually sent it out on the 18th day, and we wound up having, that 3 taken off the 30. So we really had 27 days to deny, and we denied it on the 28th. So the denial was ultimately decided to be 1 day late, and you have to be careful about that. But again, unlike the last section, we do have a little bit more wiggle room here. And we can use that to our advantage. We try not to have to use those things. I just want to stress that, let's try to get them out within the 15 business days.
Yeah, timeliness is key, is very important. I mean, they're very strict rules. We say wiggle room, there really is none. That is something that was determined later on that you lose the time at the end of the denial, but these are pretty strict guidelines. They're very strict with the 30-day rule. If you don't get the verification that we requested initially, of course, we send a follow-up. You have 30 days, calendar days to get that information in. You don't get it, 10 calendar days, need to send the follow-up for the verification, and that's going to keep tolling active. And they can't be ignored. It is something, an inaction is not a defense. Christina Kroll, I know you were dealing with that issue on many occasions where we sent out verification requests and they just were ignored, and that they can't
Yeah,
do.
they make arguments that it wasn't a valid verification request, and so we didn't need to respond to it. And we always use the same 2 cases. There's one called Westchester County Medical Center versus New York Central Mutual, and there's another one, Canarsie Chiropractic versus State Farm. And in both of them, the judge, or yes, it was judges in both, they said that, any confusion is supposed to be communicated. Inaction is not a defense. If you fail to respond to the verification request, you can't later think that, you could somehow be stopped from
Right. You
responding.
can't complain that it's invalid if you do nothing,
That is correct. And so
basically.
they waive that argument by ignoring it. I love raising those cases because
But we still need to be timely because the timeliness is strict. So if we're out
yes.
of the time frames, we're out of the box anyway.
Yeah, this argument goes more to the validity of our verification requests. When they argue there's nothing being requested, they're not tolling anything. It's more of a delay letter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Or sometimes they'll say, well, they requested an MRI film and we're just, a physical therapy facility, we don't have that. Any objection has to be communicated. They have to respond in some way, whether that's we don't have it, whether that's, you're requesting it from the wrong person, whatever the case may be, they do have to
Yeah.
articulate that.
And
And
those
it's
are good, and those are good arguments, but unfortunately you've waived them because you never responded and you ignored the verification requests.
right.
It's
Right.
good case law.
It is.
Yeah.
And you have to document both requests the best that you can, keep track of this. Maintaining proof of mailing, most often that's going to be following the company's business practices and procedures for mailing. Whatever those are, you've been trained in them, stick to it so that it's consistent. And when we go into court, this makes our life easier as far as mailing goes. Whoever the adjuster is that's submitting an affidavit to show timeliness, they can go through and say, oh, mailing procedures were followed exactly in this particular situation. So it becomes more reliable for the mailing. That's what's required.
Mhm.
How do we use the tolling? What is that? Well, it preserves our ability. We investigate early, we obtain relevant documentation or information that may be used to verify the claim and pay it, or to verify the claim and then deny the claim. So the establishes that what we call the delay was justified and compliant. The tolling, we always want to refer to it as tolling. Builds a record for timely denials for use in litigation. So this way we have our line down, receipt of bill, first verification, second verification, timely denial. And in fraudulent exaggerated claims, these verification requests, we do want to be timely whenever possible. So these are going to definitely assist us in all of our defenses, having that structure down tight. Risks and common errors, late follow-ups where the tolling is cut off, the 30-day window is shortened. Christine O'Shea just spoke about that. Overbroad or vague requests. How many times do you guys see where there's a verification request that says we're investigating the claim and that's it? And that's never enough. Am I right?
Yep, that's when I use the Canarsie and Westchester cases.
Right. Right. But those are the arguments that we see on those is, that's harkens back to what you were saying before, Mike, with you, then they're typically referred to as delay letters. They're not really requesting anything specific.
Right. So we want to be as specific as possible using company approved templates, of course. And gaps between requests, you want to be careful. Make sure you get those time frames as tight as you can. And if there are EUOs or signed statements, whenever possible, put the date of the EUO upcoming or the date of that the scheduled signed statement is. If you have that information, that makes the verification request on those two matters a little bit tighter and a little bit better for us to use.
What we have seen also with that issue is that if we are indicating that an EUO or a signed statement is being scheduled of one of the occupants in a vehicle, let's say, oftentimes, especially in motion practice, what we like to do is get those transcripts because sometimes the adjusters will use the date the verification was received as the date of the EUO or as the date of the signed statement. So in order to, put a nice bow on it and present that proof, we like to also include the actual signed statement or the actual EUO transcript to show and verify and also verify what the adjuster is saying in their examiner affidavit.
Right.
This
If
is
somebody's saying in their affidavit that we received the requested verification on January 2nd in the form of a signed statement, see annexed as Exhibit D, and then
Right.
it tightens it up pretty good.
Right.
So, I mean, in sum for this section, the timelines, pretty straightforward. Get these things on time. Watch the denial clock. It's always 30 days. We toll that time with our verification requests to start that 30-day clock. Be clear. Be consistent in your mailing practices and the tracking of the proof throughout the company wide. Follow those best practices the best you can. Anything you guys want to add before we move on to the next section? That was pretty straightforward. I mean, there's not much more to it. It's a lot more complex as far as what can be requested and things of that nature, but these time frames are pretty tight. You guys
Yeah, I
have
think it's
anything?
a pretty good summary on how to make our case ironclad and strong enough in litigation and
Yeah.
arbitration. It's a
Right.
perfect summary. Yeah.
And as always, I think I always suggest that if there is any kind of question as to when the timeline is running or what should be included in a verification request, we're always more than happy to help
Yeah, of
and
course.
chime in. We weigh in on those issues, to do it, to make sure that we are dotting our I's and crossing our T's on that. We
Yeah.
don't want to miss these timelines.
Yeah, and we're probably the best people to ask because we see it in action later on in arbitration and litigation. So yeah, absolutely. That's a great suggestion.
Yeah, we know what the arbitrators and the judges are going to be asking for, what the plaintiff's attorneys are going to be arguing. We be prepared for that.
Yeah.
So leading up to our next section, we got through the initial claim from the receipt of the NF2 or the first notice, that phone call, through the verification process. We got our bills. We sent out our verification requests timely and proper. Next, from verification to the denial, when does that tolling actually end? We touched on that. Denial requirements and the use of verification in our litigation and arbitration forums. So we'll be right back with the next section. See you guys in a minute.